Hey everybody, it's Alan here again, and today I want to talk to you about something that's hitting a lot of people's wallets, or if it's not hitting your wallets as a young family, it might be hitting it here pretty soon. And that is the idea of extracurricular activities for your children. Particularly, they were going to be focusing in on sports, right? And so, sports has really become a lifestyle choice here. You know, it used to be when I was a kid, we went out to the rec, we played, 2, 3 games a week, played about 12 games a year. For those that were really committed, we go play on the All Stars and practice in June and have the first tournament in July, right? And even then, that seemed like it kind of took up the entire summer, right? And so it was really kind of hard to have an actual summer. It was either always practices or games or tournaments or things like that. And then as we kind of progressed here, we got into travel ball, and then all of a sudden we started playing fall baseball, and then we started playing summer travel ball, and then the sandwich in between was school ball. And next thing you know, 3 quarters of the year, we're playing ball. And our off season was a couple months in the winter, and the fall ball cost a little bit of money, but generally it was centrally located at one park. Maybe it wasn't the best competition, but kind of just kept you sharp. Whereas the summer ball, we were traveling all across the state of Georgia here to go play baseball, and then sometimes down into Florida, which required hotel rooms, and that got really expensive there. And so, as that industry has really, and this is, I'm 37, so we're talking about, it's hard to say, 20 years ago now? My gosh, right? Where did the time go? But, as we're looking at that entire industry, I remember being on, I'm not going to mention his name, but my coach's very first team. And now my coach, I look it up pretty regularly. I think he's got more than 20 teams, and he's got, basically $1 million a year business that he's running with hundreds and hundreds of athletes across multiple geographies and multiple age groups. And it's really, travel ball has really become an industry within itself, and a big money industry. And so my experience here is with baseball, but your experience might have been with soccer, with basketball, really the only tennis, golf. Really, the only sport that doesn't have this is football, because football is the one thing that the more you play is probably not the better, right? And whereas baseball, the more at bats you get, and generally you tend to get better. But all of these sports, the more you play, the better. It's not necessarily the better that you get here, right? Football is the ultimate example of the more games you play, more chances to get injured, the more chances to hurt your future on this. But even in baseball, the more pitches you throw, the more your elbow's going to give out. And we're seeing Tommy John surgery earlier and earlier. Tennis, you're going to see, hey, the more you play, the more burnout there can be. Same with golf here, too, right? And so we have this idea here that our kids have to be highly specialized in this one sport, and it's leading to burnout. It's leading to a lot of resources being thrown at this, and very rarely is it leading to a full athletic scholarship, let alone certainly not a pro career on this, right? So what we're seeing here, guys, is people spending astronomical amount of time and resources to get their kids to an elite level of athletics, when the truth is that whatever scholarship they get from school, shoot, they'd be better off just paying for school, right? I remember, my brother was a really good tennis player, and honestly, we thought he might have a chance to go pro at some point. Beautiful strokes, whatever. And we, pulled him out of high school, put him into homeschooling so he could play more. And I don't know how much that my parents ended up spending on his lessons and things of that nature, but he ended up getting a scholarship, a college scholarship to play at GCSU, and it really did lower the overall college cost. Well, the truth is that if you have Hope Scholarship and you have Zell Scholarship and you go to GCSU, your school's pretty much free anyways, right? So I don't know if they, even with the full scholarship, if they even broke even on that. I have no clue. I've got a hunch here. And obviously, y'all, there's a lot more to it than just finances. When you play a sport, you do learn stuff. You learn how to deal with adversity. You learn mental toughness. You learn training. You learn discipline. If you're on teams, you learn how to deal with teammates, both good and bad. There's a lot of life lessons that we are going to learn via playing sports. But who's to say you can't get that in the local rec league? Who's to say that you got to go travel all across the country to go do all of these things, right? So here are the numbers. I went on 11 Live News the other day, so these numbers might be a little bit off here. But in general, when you look up studies, the average that somebody is spending a year per child on being an elite level athlete is about $1,000 a month. The average is about 12 grand a year to be an elite athlete. Okay. Now, obviously, some sports are more expensive. Golf is exceptionally expensive with private lessons, country club memberships. Tee times. My gosh, golf in general is just a really expensive sport. So to raise an elite level athlete from like middle school to high school age, it was like $75 to $100,000. Baseball was a little bit less, $50 to $100,000. Basketball was like 30 to 50. Basketball, you don't have as much equipment, right? You have a basketball and you got basketball shoes. That's about it, right? And there's a lot of gyms here, so gym time is cheap, right? And then all of a sudden we get to more expensive sports, like lacrosse. Lacrosse is exceptionally expensive. Lacrosse is basically a rich person sport, right? A lot of Ivy League kids playing lacrosse, maybe to help them get into those Ivy Leagues, right? So we have lacrosse, which, if you're down in Georgia, you got to travel a lot up north to play really good competition. So now all of a sudden we've got travel, we've got hotels, and, these lacrosse tournaments, I've been told by other parents, they're not in cheap parts of town, right? You might have a baseball tournament in Dothan, Alabama, where you can get a really cheap hotel room, right? These lacrosse, no, they don't play in cheap parts of town, right? These are in really nice parts of town. And so another one would be ice hockey, right? Ice hockey, not that many rinks here in Atlanta, Georgia. Ice time's really expensive. Equipment is god awful expensive. And once again, to get good competition, you got to travel a little bit, right? Now, cheaper alternative, and the reason a lot of our best athletes are still playing football, it's not because of the payday at the NFL level. As a matter of fact, the payday at the NFL level is very low relative to other professional sports. The average salary, I believe, was just right about $4 million, I think. But the average life of an NFL career is like 3.5 years, right? Compare that to baseball, that's averaging $5 million a year of salary over 5.5 years. Compare that to basketball, that's almost at $10 million a year of salary with an average life expectancy of much longer, right? When we're looking at this stuff, the finances at the end of the day just are not making sense. It's not making sense to be putting all this time and effort and stress and resources into raising an elite athlete for the hope that they get an athletic scholarship and maybe a bet that they play professional, right? So, but that is why football is continuing to get our best athletes, is because it's the cheapest, right? All football is pretty much youth and school driven, right? So a lot of the travel, a lot of the equipment, it's covered by the school, and you play 12, 13 games a year. Now you got to freaking weight lift the other 19 months out of the year. You're in the gym at 6 a.m., right? And there's a lot. It's almost like football is a full year-round sport. That being said, it is a cheaper one, right? And so when we are looking at the amount of money that kids, parents are spending on their kids to do this, we do need to take a pause here, because this is a uniquely American problem. Other countries don't have this problem, y'all. And here's the thing. I said this when I went on 11 Live News. I said, hey, the one thing you cannot buy, you can buy private lessons. You can buy the best bats in the world, the best equipment, the best shoes, you name it, right? You can buy yourself onto the East Cobb baseball team over here, right? If you look at their teams, they got 30 players on a team because they're willing to take money from anybody, right? But at the end of the day, you cannot buy talent. There's two things you can't do. You can't buy talent and you can't hide talent. Right. And so when I was at a small school, and I was in 8th grade, I was pretty good at baseball. And we're like, hey, should we go to a larger school to get more visibility from scouts? And the overwhelming answer was absolutely not. Right. If you're talented, they will find you. right? And the same thing is happening, right now. Now, the truth is, I was in eighth grade and I didn't grow a single inch above that, and turns out it didn't really matter for me. But if your kid's talented, they're going to find that talent, and it could be on the high school field, it could be on the travel field. But if they're talented, they will rise to the top. Now, obviously, there has to be some level of instruction there and some level of exposure. But in general, here, there are a lot of poor people in other countries that are making millions upon millions of dollars, right? Juan Soto just signed a $500 million contract, right? Shohei Ohtani is another one that signed a $500 million contract, right? These are not American prospects, right? Juan Soto, I forget which South American country he's from, right? But I'm going to guess he did not grow up rich, right? Ronald Acuna Jr. did not grow up rich. So 30% of MLB is being played by people from third world countries, okay? That may have stories of hitting bottle caps with broomsticks on this, right? So just to let you know, we can throw as much money at this as we want, and it's not going to increase their chances. Maybe a little bit of getting a college scholarship, but probably not that much of getting a professional contract. And that's what's great about sports. Sports are the ultimate meritocracy. Okay, unless you are a LeBron James' son, right? You are not making a pro sports team unless you are the best of the best. Doesn't matter who your mama was, doesn't matter who your daddy was, unless that's LeBron James. Other than that, right, you have to prove yourself and you've got to continue to improve yourself. And it's ruthless. And the moment you stop proving yourself, you're kicked to the curb, right? But at the end of the day, it's the ultimate meritocracy, right? There are no favorites on this. And so that's what's great about sports, is that the best players are going to rise to the top. And whether or not, obviously, private lessons can help. Obviously, a nice bat or whatever equipment can help, but it's only going to help to a certain extent here. So as we're talking to families about how do they plan this out, our solution is very simple, is to get their kids into piano lessons very early on. Of course, I'm joking, right? Of course, I'm joking, because there's something else to this. The kids have to find out themselves that they're not that good, right? They just do. We have to tell them as parents. We have to tell them that they can go do whatever they want, right? They can be whatever they want. And by golly, we got to do it in a way where they believe it, right? Eventually, the world will let them know, but that's not our jobs as parents. Our job is to let them think and make them believe that they can do and be whatever they want, and if they work hard enough, they can make that happen. Even in the back of the mind, I know that I'm 5'9", and my kid's probably not going to play professional basketball, and that's totally fine. When they're 5, let them believe it, right? So we have to give the kids the resources that they need to be able to find this out on their own, and in doing so, they go through this kind of life journey where they find out a lot about themselves, and there's a lot of value to that, right? But the value is not there to do that at the sacrifice of your retirement, or at the sacrifice of college education, right? Or at the sacrifice of taking out debts, right? The truth is if your kid is talented enough, they'll find scholarships to go play on these private school teams, on these travel ball teams. They can find endorsements here, right? If we are having trouble, finding the money to make this happen, right? We can find a way on this, right? So, particularly if they're good enough, right? If they're not good enough, then sure, that's not going to happen. But if they're good enough, then we can find subsidies to make this more affordable for you, right? So here's my plea to you. Your kid's probably not going to be a professional athlete. Your kid's probably not going to get a full scholarship, athletic scholarship. Your kid's probably not going to play college sports, right? And so we have to look at this and say, okay, we want to provide our kid the best shot, no doubt. But how do we do that within boundaries, right? Because maybe playing on the East Cobb baseball team, maybe there's another travel team that's not as expensive, right? Maybe we don't need individualized lessons. Maybe we can do group lessons. Maybe we can go to baseball camps during the summer with a bunch of kids. That's rather cheap and gives you some free time, right? There are cheaper ways that people can hone their skills here, and don't have to have the best of absolute everything, because if they are good enough, the teams will find them, right? And then all of a sudden, it's a different ball game where they're trying to recruit you and your kids to play on their team, and maybe we have some leverage here on that, right? I know I'm talking about baseball. That's my world that I live in. Basketball is the same thing with AAU basketball, right there. Tennis is a little bit different. I mean, if you're going to play a country club sport like tennis and golf, you're going to pay country club prices. Um, Now, when we look at tennis, so let's talk about tennis and tennis scholarships here. I've got a little bit, both my brothers play college tennis. And, one of the gripes I have about college tennis is that a lot of these scholarships are actually going to foreign players, right? And I think there's something fundamentally wrong about our tax dollars going to fund foreign players' academics and college careers when typically they go back to that country. And some of our best friends, by the way, family friends, were able to take advantage of that, right? But the problem is that hey, that took away a spot from an American there, and we educated them. Then when they go back to their country, and that's a problem. Now we tend not to find that as much in women's tennis as much as men's tennis, and maybe the times have caught up on me. It's been a little while here, but in general, one of the things that people are doing is they're getting their kids into these unique sports here that allow them to get into colleges, right? And I personally think the ultimate thing for a sport would be to allow your kid to get into a college that they may not have been able to get into without that, right? For instance, let's say that your daughter takes up tennis or volleyball, you name it, and she's a good student, not a great student, right? But because she's a good volleyball player, not a great volleyball player, she's able to get into, let's call it an Ivy League school, when otherwise she wouldn't be able to get in there just on academics alone. That's a win, right? Now all of a sudden, all right, we're at Harvard, maybe we're dating somebody who's a billionaire or going to become a billionaire, maybe we get in and we get a job at Wall Street and start making big time money. Yeah, that's a really good rate of return right there. Okay, that to me is the ultimate rate of return on a sport right there, is being able to get into a college that you otherwise would not have been able to get into, therefore unlocking opportunities that you may not have had there, right? And I think that that's what a lot of people think about here when they're doing sports is, okay, we got the intangibles. Those are life lessons that'll carry on forever. We know that we're probably not going to get a pro contract, let alone maybe not even a college scholarship, but maybe we can leverage the athletics here to get into a school that is a rather good school to give that person the opportunity to get a great job offer afterwards. So, anyways, hey, I wanted to talk to you guys about this. Just want to warn you how expensive and absurd this is getting. By the way, like I said, I don't think that there's a correlation between the more games and the more money you throw at it, the more college scholarships there are. Matter of fact, in baseball, there used to be a saying that, hey, no rich person's ever made it to the MLB. Right? Now, the truth is some rich people have, but I get what they were trying to say is that, hey, listen, yeah, the reason we have so many awesome Cuban baseball players is that they got to hit themselves off that island, right? They come over, that none of them take walks, I don't think, but they got to hit themselves off of the island, right? So they have to make it. That's their only way out, is through professional sports, and therefore it just motivates them that much more. But if you have fallback options, maybe you're not going to get up and do that extra set, right? Maybe you're not going to do that extra batting practice, whatever it is, right? And over time, those tend to add up, right? So, we don't have to be rich in order to play professional sports, but also being rich does not really give you that much of a heads up. So as we are looking at our budgets and deciding, hey, how much time and effort do we throw at this thing, just remember everything that we talked about, right? And as my father famously said, after all the heartbreak that sports cause, from the injuries that you get, from the tough losses that you have, maybe piano lessons aren't such a bad idea there. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Just want to make you think about it. By the way, I talked to parents, and we were talking earlier about the cost of it. I've talked to some parents, and they're telling me that $100,000 is child's play. That these are easy. That's easy to surpass. That to raise an elite athlete where they're playing travel ball all throughout high school and maybe even middle school, we might be looking at $300,000 to $400,000 in order to raise that elite athlete, right? And that's when you really have to look at the system and say, am I going to participate in this broken system? All right. Hey, hope you enjoy this. Have a great day.